Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, that's one of the most famous things that Mike Tyson's ever said. And it rings true. It rings true in every aspect of our life. If we have a plan and something bad happens and it goes off the rails, what do we do? So let's talk about it. I'm Chris Burns from Techie Gurus. I should probably put a trigger warning on this because I'm sure I'll have people coming at me about it, but I'm a huge Michigan fan. And going into the game on Saturday, I knew what the game plan was going to be for both sides. Stop the run. Both teams are very good at running the football. Clearly, the game plan would be stop run from a defensive standpoint. From an offensive standpoint, they were going to have to throw the ball. Both teams. At least going into it, that's what you would assume. Early on in the game, everything played out the way you would think, right? Both teams were struggling to run the football. Michigan was throwing the football a lot better. And then in the second quarter, the game changed when there was a strip sack on Thorne for Michigan State. He fumbled the football and it was recovered in the end zone. Now, the controversy with this call was on the field, there was no video evidence that he had control of the football when his shin touched. The rules official for Fox said that. The announcers couldn't believe it. I haven't found one person outside of Michigan State fans that just want to ignore that call. That call loomed large later in that game. That was a 4-point swing. Michigan ended up getting a field goal after getting a punt back, but it was 4 points that it cost them on the scoreboard. Consequently, the score was 37-33 at the end. Now, we can talk about the one play, but there were other plays in that game. There are other plays in that game that changed from factors that Michigan or Michigan State couldn't control. The officials aren't under your control when you play a football game. Now, sure, you know tendencies of the officials on the field. You should be doing that during game planning and studying for that. Like if an official typically would call more pass interference or defensive holding, you want to make sure that you're not tugging on jerseys and things like that. That's all part of the game. But what's not part of the game is when officials dictate results. And it's not just the Michigan game. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a sore loser fan for this one. Mississippi State got totally screwed by the officials early in the year when they downed a punt, and it should have been down. It was hit twice by Mississippi State players, and a Memphis player picked it up and ran it in for a touchdown. Now, after the game, the SEC apologized for that, but it doesn't matter because the game results are official. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who apologized or whatnot. So what I want to talk about is game planning. Now, we officially use the term game plan more in athletics than anywhere else. Like I said, I talked about football. You know, you got to go into a game with a game plan. Baseball's no different. You go in trying to see how you're going to attack each hitter. And from a hitter's perspective, how are you going to attack the pitchers that are going to be playing in the game? And those are sports I love. There's other ones. Hockey obviously has its own game planning. Every athletics have game planning, but so does business. And we need to have a plan. So we have to look at who are we facing. We have to look at our competitors. We have to look at the market. We have to look at how is the economy doing? Because if you manufacture something that people want, it could be in high demand. But if it's at a time when there's an economic downturn, maybe it's something that you manufacture that they don't necessarily want or need. Now, if you offer a service, depends on what type of service you offer, it could be higher or lower depending on a number of factors, some of which you control and some that you don't. So you need a game plan to cover all of that. You know, I referenced the Michigan State game because it's a good lesson for how we should attack business. We need to have a plan. We need to have a plan on three main things. And you'll hear it called an incident response plan. That's typically what it should be. There's more to it than that. But like just from a cybersecurity perspective, it's called an incident response plan. So what are the three things? Well, the first one is you need a plan to protect your data. Now, protecting your data, the importance of it, both personally and professionally, is extremely high, right? When you have an incident, if you don't have a plan, people scramble. So let's say something like ransomware happens or somebody just deletes a bunch of files on you and you don't have a plan, you don't have a recovery plan or anything like that. People will scramble. And in panic, people don't make good decisions. So what we want is a plan that if something happens to our data, we have a plan to recover from it. Now, like I said, it could be ransomware, it could be deleting, it could be somebody leaked it to the public. Maybe you have confidential information that somebody inside your company stole and leaked it to the public, and it's damaging for your company. What's your plan? You need a PR plan. You need a response plan. So protecting digital assets through incident response, it includes countless tasks and responsibilities for the incident response team. Now, if you don't have an incident response team, normally you're going to rely on a cybersecurity company or maybe a tech company in general, with a combination of them and your employees to kind of draw this out and figure out what the plan is. But there are important procedures like securing backups, leveraging logs, and security alerts to detect like some sort of malicious activity and properly identify access management for that data. Now, you want to try to avoid insider threats. You also want to pay strong attention to like patch management, make sure that vulnerabilities are patched. Now, number 2 is you want to protect your reputation and your customers' trust. 78% of people found by an IDC poll said that they would take their business elsewhere if they were directly affected by a data leak. Can you afford 78% of your consumers changing? Most of us can't. I know it'd be tough for us. I can't imagine what it'd be for other businesses, other lines. So if a security breach isn't properly handled, the company's risk to some or all of its customer base is immense. A data breach doesn't instill confidence in your customers. You probably know that, but it's a PR nightmare. If you have to stand up there and you have to write press releases and you have to give responses, you get interviews and stuff like that for it, it's actually a nightmare for you. Not to mention if you're a publicly traded corporation. So we've seen that a lot where stock prices after a data breach have been hit in the last few years. Those are public companies. Those are the ones that you're going to see because they're going to have to report that. The ones you don't see are private companies. And a lot of private companies just go out of business. Because if their customers lose trust and they lose 78% of their customer base, they're pretty much going to go out of business. And the third thing is it's really to protect your revenue. An incident response process, it safeguards your organization from potential loss of revenue. Now, according to Pwnymine Institute, this is from 2017, but this still plays pretty much true. They did a data breach study and the cost of it. The average cost of a data breach was $3.6 million. That's actually increased since 2017. The ransoms are way up, but it's not just all about ransomware. It could, like I said, it could be insider threats, it could be deletions, it could be just a hacking attempt in general. The Home Depot breach is a good one to go back to because they lost 65 million credit card and debit card accounts. Now, that breach cost them $62 million. The Target breach around the same time frame, they lost more than 100 million records, and that actually dropped their stock 10%. Those are large companies, and I understand you may not be a large company, but 60% of small and medium businesses just plain go out of business after a data breach within 6 months. That's just the truth. It's not making things up. That's what almost every study I've ever seen estimates. And it could be higher. It depends. Because if people don't admit that it was a data breach and put them out of business, that's going to affect it. And maybe some claim that it was a data breach, whatever. The direct company revenue is at stake in a data breach, but it's also cost for like legal, remediation, forensics investigations, regulatory compliance fines, and just the PR of it. So the faster you can detect and respond to a data breach or even a security incident, the less likely you'll have a significant impact on your data, your customer trust, and your reputation, and even a potential loss in revenue. So if your organization doesn't have an incident response plan, which obviously I highly recommend, you need to consider leveraging a third-party managed security service provider to implement a customized plan for you, or just some sort of consultant that can come in and kind of help you create a plan. Now, this isn't always going to be technical. Some of it will be technical. Some of it's just going to be, hey, what happens if we have a fire? Who's responsible for calling whom? Who's responsible for notifying all the employees that they shouldn't come into work or that they need to leave? This is stuff that you have to plan for. You need a plan. So the second something bad happens, we put that plan into motion. Now, it should be written. Obviously, having a digital copy is great, but like if something happens to your data, you need a written copy as well. So these are things to think about. Again, I'm not too irritated by the game. I mean, I am irritated by the game, but I'm more irritated at the officials and the way that unfolded. Look, both teams played a great game. It was a great game. It's unfortunate that Michigan lost. And it's unfortunate the way that some of the controversy came out. But at the end of the day, the score is a score, and that's the final. So when something bad happens in your business or to your favorite sports team or even personally to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world. It just means you got to pick it up and move forward. So if you don't have a plan, you've had a security incident, you kind of understand where I'm coming from. You understand that there were some gaps there that you need to be filled, and a plan needs to be tested. The more you test the plan, the more gaps you're going to find. So I'm Chris Burns from Techie Gurus. Until next time, stay cyber safe.